Blind Nil Audio.
Sometimes I think about what money would say to me if it could talk. And I think it would say to me, bro, listen, you've just given me a job I cannot do. This was never my job. This whole make you happy thing, it was never my job. I was here to make your life easier. But I wasn't supposed to carry all of this weight you've placed on me. I can't make you happy. I can't buy you love. And I can't make you feel more secure about myself. Greetings, this is Carl, and you're listening to another episode of 50 Fires. And if money could talk, it would have a lot to say to my guest today, Daren Thomas Magee. Daren is the artist behind Real Fun Wow. He's a guy whose work somehow manages to be both cosmically beautiful and deeply human at the same time. And I wanted to have Daren on the show because of how open he's been about the creative process and the role money plays in it. He talks in depth about making a living as an artist, about the real and unfiltered struggles that come with doing that.
I couldn't wait to get on the show and tell you all I'm broke. So don't think that 333,000 followers, if every follower gave me $1 a year, I'd be okay.
You're going to love this conversation with Daren Thomas Magee. So let's dive in. So excited that you agreed to do this.
Yeah, it's
I've been a huge, one of you, you're one of my favorite people on the internet, whatever that means.
Save this for the recording. I hope that you say all this as well.
Yeah. Well, we are recording. We'll blend this in. I just have always really loved the, I don't even know what the right word is. It's like self-deprecating / honest / what the hell am I doing this sort of vibe, which is not contrived. It doesn't feel like, but it feels the same. Like, am I really one of the hand wavy people on the same angst I have? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And I always appreciate when people can kind of summarize me or kind of wrap me up in a few words. And I think the thing that I do have that resonates with other people is that kind of that sort of self-evaluation, self-deprecation. We all feel certain things about ourselves, whether we hide them better than other people do. But I think we all, even being invited on this show, I felt immediate imposter syndrome. I'm like, who the hell am I? I looked at your roster of guests, authors, and various people who have done things, and it makes me feel like I haven't done anything. But then I realized, wait, I am a person. And that's where it kind of comes back to this human-centric thing that we all can relate to, is we're all human at the end of the day.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's maybe start there. You get an invitation to come on and talk publicly about money, which is something I thought we all agreed never to talk about in polite company: money, politics, sex, and religion.
Yep.
We've had way too much of the politics and enough of the sex thing, but why agree to come have a conversation about money with a stranger?
Well, I mean, money is at the forefront of my frontal lobe at most times. And so it's always I'm able to speak about it at any given point throughout the day. And I always love an opportunity to be really honest, to be really open, to have a platform to share my experience, which again, I think can sometimes resonate when people put their hands up and say, me too. Yep. I thank you for verbalizing that. And so to kind of be in this very privileged position to share my experience, which I don't think is an individual experience, I think is a collective experience. So without making myself sound too important, I think that I can speak for a lot of people out there, maybe without their consent, but they can relate to things that I've experienced, whether they're an artist in particular or just a human being in the Western world who gained no insight at an early age as to what money is, how to use it, and then therefore kind of building stories from that inexperience and then having it as this kind of more of a scary thing than an empowering thing.
I thought that's really interesting. I thought you were an artist. What do you mean money's on the front of your frontal lobe? You know what I mean? I thought artists weren't allowed to think about money.
Okay, well, let me differentiate myself. I am a professional artist, and so my artwork is how I feed myself and my child and stay in this house that I'm in right now. And so I don't know that I think there was a time in history. I don't know anything about art history. I didn't go to school for anything at all, but I can imagine there was a time where there were artists who were supported by patrons of the arts, and they said, you go up on the chapel ceiling and paint our God, and we will take care of you, and you will not need to worry or wonder about how you're going to feed yourself. You just channel this spirit that you've been bestowed, this channel, to be able to produce your art. It's not like that anymore, Carl. I don't know, or at least not for me. It's not. I don't know. Maybe there are still patrons potentially, but I don't have them. And so my patrons are my customers, and those customers are people that find any sort of value on my artwork and decide to purchase. And so I'm in this hustle game where I'm getting to do what I love to do. And that's really, really important to me. But at the end of the day, I am at this very awkward cross section of art and commerce. Like my artwork is not just, this is the expression of my soul. It's like, no, I need to sell you this thing so I can pay my light bill. It's really, I kind of ruined it for myself by becoming a professional artist.
When did you first, when did this first become a thing? Like, when did you first realize, like, oh no, like I got to sell stuff on the internet?
Well, it was like, it started, the career was not, there was never a plan. I kind of started to spend more time at the jobs that I had, kind of screwing off, and like being in, like, the last job I ever had was when I moved to Ohio in 2017, and I was bartending, and I was at that point starting to draw a lot and like pouring a lot of my time into this little world where I just create these little things. And at the bar that I worked at, it was kind of slow. And so I was in this position to be able to kind of just be drawing on napkins. And I just was like, this is where I want to be. Like, I want to be on this piece of paper, not fake smiling at these customers at the bar. And so it became really, that was the genesis of following a passion and being like, okay, this is the passion. I'm not at all thinking about money, not at all thinking I might be able to make a living doing this. Just like, no, I want to follow this feeling. This feels really good. And the universe opened itself up and then started to sort of provide me opportunities that way. I started to post on Instagram, which at the time was just an account that my friends and family were on. And it was nothing to speak of in terms of like, this is the way I promote a business, because there was no business. It was just like, hey, look, I drew this picture, take a picture of it. Oh, that Daren draws. Hey, I need an album cover. Hey, I need a wedding invitation. And then really, like, I've always kind of modeled it after the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. So if you want to do something, you have to show the world that you're doing it. And what a amazing time we live in, where you can literally show the entire world you're doing something by just posting it on your Instagram. And so I did that. And so then money did start coming in, and then it was enough money to say, I think I can quit this job. I think I can get out of this job. And then it was just like one foot in the job world, one foot in the art world. And I took that foot out of the job world and stepped fully into the art world. And then it was, now you need to do this. Now you need to make money doing this. And so it was pretty early on, but the joy and the love was still so fresh, and the novelty was still so fresh. And it hadn't become a business yet, which is what it is now, where I've fallen into every single pitfall along the way of running a small business, where I have no business acumen whatsoever. And the only way I've been learning is by making mistakes, huge, catastrophic financial mistakes that have like put me in the position I'm in right now. And so it's the only way. I just baptism by fire right from the beginning.
Yeah. It's something I used to say a lot. It was like, because the art side of my career started with these simple drawings that I would do on a napkin for clients trying to explain a complex subject. And then I got this relatively random email from the New York Times saying, hey, I love these. Would you do them for us? And I knew enough, despite being a kid from the hills in Utah, to say yes to that. Right? Like, I think I would do that. But I remember saying, like, if this had happened 30 years ago, like I was drawing these things, my mom and everybody else with any sense would have said, stop that. Like, go get a real job, right? It was only the internet that made it possible for me to do something really silly.
Yes.
And there to be enough people out there that like it resonated with. Yeah,
for sure.
And it's super, super interesting to me now that like, but that follow your passion, build it and they will come thing. I would imagine you have some conflicted feelings like I do about that. Like, when is that dangerous advice?
Dangerous. I mean, let's take the word. Can we find maybe a softer word than dangerous? Because
irresponsible, is that softer?
Well, I mean, okay. So then in whose terms? Your parents or your friends? Or like, I think irresponsibility is relative. I mean, if you have obligations that you need to be taking care of people and put food on table and keep roof overhead, maybe there's some irresponsibility in that. But ultimately, I think really the one important, amazing thing you can do in this life is follow your passion. Because when you're following your passion, you're not following it as I'm going to get there someday. You are following it in every step you're taking. And so for me, for my life, as an example, every moment that I'm following my passion is that present moment where I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. It's not like I'm going to toil for 5 years and then I'll get to my passion. Your passion is a real-time thing. Your passion is the present moment experience. And again, it could have potentially been ill-advised, and someone could have said you should get a real job, but unfortunately no one ever said that to me. Nobody was there to guide me for better or for worse. And so I've blazed my own trail, and it come of it what may at this point.
Yeah, we had Scott Ballou on, and Scott produces all the Yeti, kind of those lifestyle films that Yeti Coolers makes. And he talked about how out of college he got a job selling life insurance.
Fun.
And yeah, I know, exactly. And he said, and it's become almost a metaphor for the show. He said, he had to quit because he just couldn't keep wearing the khaki pants. And I asked him, I said, Scott, are there some days you wish you could have? And he got this big look in his eyes and said, almost every day.
Wow.
Really? Sort of like almost every day. I wish I could be like, but I can't. Like, it's not a choice. Like, I've got to follow this. I've got this peak experience, this creativity. He's like, almost every day I wish I had a little bit of that stability. Like,
so is that what the khaki pants represent? Stability?
Yeah, khaki pants was sort of stability, but it also had the downside of like boring and unable to do.
And also, I mean, stability, you can't depend entirely on it, because, the khaki pants, you might show up to a building one day that you wear the khaki pants to every day, and that building doesn't exist anymore because it went out of business. Right. And so stability is an illusion anyway. So you might as well be doing an unstable thing that you enjoy versus a quote unquote stable thing that you think was built on stability of somebody else. Because when we're thinking of stable things, we're often thinking about working for somebody else. We think that person's got all the stability. They built this whole infrastructure, and I'm going to show up every single day. But there's obviously instances of where that's not the case. We have financial downturns and layoffs and just mass sort of effects that happen. And then you've been just wearing khaki pants for the past 25 years. Why not put the board shorts on and have some fun with it? I don't know if that's irresponsible advice, but
no. You seem to have really leaned into that, and I'm in the same way. Like, it drives me. There was a point in my life where I was this unapologetic advocate for people, and I remember my brother-in-law like, you gotta make the thing, like, oh. And my wife one time pulled me aside and was like, you stop it. And I was like, I'm trying to save them. Yeah. And she's like, nobody needs your saving. That's totally. For sure.
Yes.
But that not, where do you think, I'm curious about that risk you just pointed to. Like, I look at your business, and we'll get to the risk and mistakes and all that in a minute. But I look at your business and I think, like, you've got a whole bunch of bosses that, rather than having one that could just make a decision one day that you can no longer come to work.
Yeah.
And so I actually see that as a little less risky.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the risk feels diffuse. It feels spread out. You could make a mistake. Obviously you could make a mistake to violate the trust of a whole bunch of people all at once. And we've seen examples of that. But barring that, it feels to me, so whenever anybody comes to me and is like, you that's so risky what you're doing, I'm always like, well, I'm confused by the statement.
Yeah. Because
it feels like the other one's an illusion. And I could just on a whim one day show up and be like, yeah, you know what? We've decided to go a different direction, Carl. Here's 2 months of severance.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. Like, why do you think people get that wrong? How do you feel about it? Do you share that thought?
I guess it's just the idea of doing anything for somebody else is something that I'm radically against and have a hard time. The idea of pursuing somebody else's bottom line or pursuing somebody else's motivations. And I'm considering just a really like classic cliche corporate faceless entity kind of, board of directors kind of thing, which I never did. The only jobs I ever had were in the service industry mainly. And so I served people and I had to be this face of hospitality and show up in this very inauthentic way. And so I never worked in an office. And so, obviously there's almost this like, or I feel this way, that there's this kind of romantic quality thanks to the NBC's The Office, or this like, we come into your job and everyone's familiar and it's got its benefits, but then, you stretch out the timeline long enough and it's just like, oh my God, I've been doing the same. Like you got the Jim Halpert who's just like sick of it, selling paper, bored to death. And so I guess it's hard to speak about jobs as a generality, but specifically for me, I just couldn't do the thing that was inauthentic to me anymore, where I'm showing up and like, I know there are people out there, and God bless them, who love hospitality, who love like showing up with a smile and like Four Seasons bow tie. Like, what can I get for you today, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? I just can't do that. That's not me. And so I think that there's just this kind of radical, just resistance towards doing shit for other people. Like I want to do what I want to do with my voice, with my tone, with my everything about it. And fortunately, that's where I find that like freedom is. And I think you make a good point. I'm still kind of beholden to an audience to a certain degree. But as much as I cannot consider them and say, you know what, I think this is funny, or I think this is original, I'm going to do it. And then I find out, it's less about creating a thing based on the preconceived notion of what's going to hit or miss. It's more about, I'm going to do it. And then I get very real-time feedback through the internet, where they go crickets or, whatever, applause. Sorry, that's not the best way of answering your question, but it's kind of speaking to just the nature of it all.
I like it. I have always felt that art is one of the most intimate forms of risk. Like you literally sort of take a piece of you, like this is deeply important to me. It's a thing I care deeply about. And then you show it to the world and you say, judge it.
Yes.
Essentially like that feels like a deeply personal form of risk.
Yes. Yeah.
How have you dealt with that? Like, how have you dealt with that kind of risk?
Well, I mean, I'll
being able to do it for so long and so often.
And not only have I lived what you just laid out, I'll one up you. I'll say, this is an expression of my soul that I'm laying before you. Judge me. And it's also $19.99. And so I put a price tag on it. And then I have to say, like, I've literally had to value this thing. We could have hung it on the wall and the value could have been at somebody looking at it and think, oh, that's pretty good. But no, then I put a little price tag on it and it doesn't sell. And so then attaching not only an emotional value, but a financial value, which, I have all these intrinsic, just enmeshed levels of my life, my expression, then tied to my well-being financially. And so it's hard. It's really, really hard. But again, I could throw it all away and just say, like, show up with my khakis on. At this point I have such a gap in my resume. That's basically, for the past 8 years, I've kind of been popular on Instagram is basically what my resume would read at this point. So I don't know where I would even go look for a job at this point, but it's hard, but it's also, it's made, I've developed muscles around it. I've gotten stronger and more capable. I mean, again, having this real time kind of anonymous feedback for the most part, where I put out, back in the day, again, the old motto was you have a gallery show and people show up and you're probably not even there and people are just judging your work and you don't even hear from it. And now I put out something and somebody can quite literally say, this sucks. I hate this. And I get that still to this day in some form or another. And year one was I'm wrecked with like obsessing. Who is this person? Going and looking at them, trying to, and of course it's always a private profile, because the people that say these very courageous, judgmental things don't ever allow themselves to be put in the position of critique. And so it was just like, it would kill me. And now I can laugh about it. Now I could potentially turn it into something of humor and just kind of like laugh at the whole nature of it all. Because if I'm taking all this stuff personally, I will not last very long. And I think a testament to how I've lasted as long as I have is developing a better relationship with it.
Yeah. We'll be right back with more from 50 Fires. Welcome back to 50 Fires. What is your earliest memory of money?
I'm sure you do, because we are both of an age to remember things before the internet. Fortunately, layaway. Do you remember layaway?
So describe it for people.
So, it's not before credit existed simultaneously as layaway, but the system was, we had a department store called Hills back where I'm from. It's just kind of Macy's-esque, so Kmart, I guess, would be closer. When I wanted a toy or I wanted something, we would often be in the necessary position to have to put it on layaway. And so the way that works is you pick out the little toy truck. The store holds onto it for you. I think they would actually like take it off the shelf and put it into a section in the back of the store where all layaway purchases go. And then as much as you can, I don't know if there were terms and conditions laid out, but from what I can remember as a child, every now and then we would go and my mom would put $2-3 on it, and you keep paying and until you've paid the entire price. And then the truck comes up from the back and you get it. And to me, it was like, I think about it now with my child and with the accessibility of things and with literally Amazon in my pocket, and my kid's like, I want that. And I love being generous. And I'm like, okay, great. It'll be here tomorrow. Ridiculous. Yeah. It's total, a real road for being spoiled for sure. And so just that kind of delayed gratification, that appreciation. And I think understanding money at a young age is such a abstract concept. But to me, it didn't ever feel like, oh, we can't afford this. I thought maybe it was just, this is how this works. Like, we're going to keep putting money on it. And so I think, at least in the beginning, it was like something of I don't feel like we don't have enough, because ultimately I got the truck. It just took maybe longer than I would have liked.
Yeah. Was there a time when you discovered that, was there a time when that perception of that, where you were financially or layaway, changed?
I think that there's been, like, my parents were both, like I said, worked really, really hard in the service industry. And I had my mom's mom, my grandmother, who had a good pension from a job that she had. And so she took care of my brother and I. So she always kind of made up for the things that my parents couldn't do. And so there was that kind of, she was, and in that kind of, familiar role of grandma, she spoiled us to death and always took care of us and made us get us everything we wanted. And I think also helped which isn't discussions we had as a family, but took care of my parents when they were in need. And so there was that kind of like that real grounded root member of the family. And so I think I didn't feel as much of the strain that my parents might've been feeling because of my grandma, because my parents tried to do the entrepreneurial thing. They got a coffee shop. They bought a coffee shop when we lived on Long Island, and it just came with all sorts of, which I ended up learning myself, all the kind of the tax, the accounting, the bookkeeping, all these things that you don't think of when all you want to do is make diner food for people. You want to do the thing that you want to do, and you find out, oh no, there's actually a whole hell of a lot more to consider. And that can kind of backlog and be a bit of a nightmare at the end. So that was I think the money was kind of a bit a peripheral thing. And we moved a lot, and we lived in houses of varying kind of, nothing special, but I don't think it ever really felt to me like, oh God, we're we could have more. We always had everything we needed, for sure.
Do you, that kind of sentiment comes up a lot among, I'm trying to decide if it's an age cohort thing. You mentioned life pre-internet. It's just interesting to me that, like, our comparison set back then was, your neighbors, your buddy at school.
Right.
And so we tended to compare ourselves to people that were if not the same socioeconomic class, like very close.
Yes. Yeah. There was not a huge difference between the Joneses and you. Like you said, it was if you lived on the same block as somebody, you probably shared similar financial situations.
Yeah.
And now you can open up your phone and see the richest of the rich and feel a level of comparison that we never, ever had before. Yeah.
Does that level of comparison ever mess with you in terms of like seeing artists? Like, does Damien Hirst make you mad?
No, I mean, I think he and the like were a bit more plugged into a scene. I think I try not to feel jealousy, especially by comparison, because of what I have and what I'm grateful for having produced on my own without any history or experience. But I think that there are times and places, and someone like Warhol or any of his contemporaries, they were at a time where like something like living in New York City in the 70s was just like, it was popping. And now I live in a really small town. I'm very, very, I'm such a homebody. I don't put myself into the movers and shakers of someone like, I got to imagine, I don't know much about Damien Hirst, but I got to imagine he knew the right people and figured some things out and figured out the kind of the business of the art world. And I think that I'm not going to be jealous of something that I haven't pursued. If I tried all that and I failed, then maybe I could feel some jealousy. But I'm like, that is just not my path. I'm happy just to like put my little posts on Instagram, and I get the amount of energy I put out into the world. I'm starting to realize and recognize that's how much I get back, especially in the form of money, where if I can ever complain about not having enough, I go, well, do more. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do more. Then be happy with what you have. It's kind of, it's an exchange system.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Are there, Instagram, online creator artists, folks that you do look at and are like, wow, they've built a really cool business. That's really cool.
Yeah, there's one guy in particular, his name's Mr. Bingo, and I've been following him for years. And I mean, you want to talk about admirable quality of expression. I think without maybe even realizing it until this moment, I've been hugely influenced by his voice, his brand. And you would have never heard of him had I not mentioned him. He lives in London, and he does speaking kind of engagements every now and then, which I'd love to do because I feel like I could stand on a stage and entertain for half an hour if I needed to. Very funny, very irreverent, just has foul mouth. I'm kind of sound like I'm describing myself right now, but just that, like, I don't give a shit what you're supposed to do. I'm going to do it this way. And even just like recently he updated his website and these like how you're supposed to have all this kind of legalese of like terms and service and return policies. And he's just like, I just can't be effed to do that. And so here's how I'm going to do it. And so just that, like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I think he lives kind of, he's not, as far as I can tell, he's not insanely wealthy or living behind a gated thing. He does what he does. And that's kind of where I'm trying to find comfort in my station and what I've made and what I've put out there, and just be like, I think this, like I said, unless barring some insane level of like wanting to plug myself into moving to LA and getting into galleries, rubbing shoulders, all stuff, like, I think this might be kind of it for me. So I'm all right.
It's really interesting. So you're optimizing. I don't want to use the word like jealous. That's not the word I mean, but you're like, the admiration comes from the fact that he seems to have optimized for his own creative freedom.
Yes.
Versus
exactly.
money or some other definition of success.
Yes, that's right. I mean, obviously that's such a personal thing, as definition of success. And I think I've always had this personal definition for wealth. For me, wealth is when you don't think about money. It doesn't mean because you have all the money in the world. It means it's managed well. It means things are established in terms of like your budget or anything that money is needed for, that it's there in a way that you're not thinking at the end of the month, oh God, how are we going to do X, Y, or Z? Wealth is just, it's taken out of the frontal lobe, like I said. And it just exists as a system like any other. It's like, it's your heart beating. You don't think about your heart beating. Money is just there. And things are taken care of. And I've been trying my best to really like keep cultivating that idea of wealth. And, it varies for sure, because when you do have a lot of money, it's obviously much easier to not think about money and vice versa. So, yeah.
Do you think, I mean, Do you think that's true, that when you have a lot of money, it's easier to not think about it?
Well, I guess what money does, and so I'll, as I'm sure you would be welcome on the show, I'll get, very disclosing. A few years ago, I had the most amount of money that I've ever had in my entire life. A sum that, it's always funny because my number to you might be, oh, really? That's not that much money.
We didn't even mention numbers because of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's so relative.
Yep.
But to me,
Yep.
it was a number, and it's all it is. When I look at it, open up my bank thing, it's literally a number. I go, well, that number is higher than it's ever been. That gives me a feeling of safety and security. And so it's not like I have all that money. Now I can finally go buy the boat. Now I can finally go buy the whatever. You can't even think of things you buy with a lot of money. To me, it's just like, I want that number to stay there because that number is safety and security. And now I think when you start to get to a level of like where the money is needing to be managed and pass through entities and all these things, like I think that, you're probably needing to consider it because it becomes a kind of a life force of itself and it has to be managed in all these ways. But for me, it was like at a number that was just like, I was kind of equated to like a level of water that we're kind of bobbing in. I'm bobbing in constantly. And the water is now not right at my nose anymore. So now like I take a breath in, I'm not like, oh God, it's just, I'm floating maybe above my shoulders at this point and go, this is comfortable. I could stay at this level forever. And knowing that I'm not just going to sink underwater. And so, I guess, you're right. I mean, no one's free from money having some sort of impact on them, even if you have a lot of it, especially if you have a lot of it. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that idea of sort of just, the level, like figuring out where the level, because certainly when we first started the show, we were out hunting for the wizards of enough. That's what I was calling it. I was trying to find these little wizards because I'd met a few of them in my work, and we realized that it was harder to find a wizard with a wizard of enough with a lot of money than it was to find a wizard of enough with very little money.
Yes.
And I found that really, really fascinating.
Yeah.
Tell me about this recent episode of your podcast, Are You Okay? Where you asked the question, "Are you okay?" and talked about a debt situation.
Oh,
and
okay,
taxes.
got it. Thank you. Yes. So the other half of the story, where I a couple of years ago had the most amount of money I've ever had. Currently, as we sit here today, I am in the deepest amount of debt I've ever been in my entire life. So it's the pendulum has swung about as far over as it could from the side when I was shoulders above water. I'm below water at this point, but I'm trying to continue with the analogy of it. I'm not dead. I'm not, I'm breathing. So what is that? Is there some kind of miraculous apparatus that's independent of money that's keeping me? I mean, I guess maybe I have a snorkel. And so, okay, what does the snorkel represent? The snorkel is presence, is a level of gratitude, a level of groundedness, that the attitude that I've needed to cultivate is, as we sit here right now, do I need money? Like, am I paying? Do I have to pay you every 5 minutes? No. Okay. So once this call ends, I'll go have some food. Okay. So there's food in the fridge. And so it's really like a real time required constant check-in. Again, it's almost thinking in that wealthy mentality. Like, I am tens of thousands of dollars in debt, not only to the IRS, to American Express, to Shop, just all these entities that I'm on the hook for, but not like right now, right now. Okay. So then I want to maybe in a week where I'll have to have a call with my accountant and we sit down and we talk brass tacks and we say, okay, how are we going to make this happen? Then at that point, okay, then money is a reality, and there's pragmatism to it, and there's strategy to it. And we have to really kind of like figure something out. But really, for 23 hours and 50 minutes of the day, I can pretty much not think about money if I'm really focused on the current moment that I'm in. When I'm running around at the playground with my kid, or I'm out for a run, like we get to choose how much we stress ourselves out about money. And I don't know if this is bypassing people's experiences, but this is my experience. And I've kind of had to cultivate this, because otherwise, had you emailed me, I'd be like, I don't want to talk about this. Are you kidding me? This is stressing me out. But to be here and like laugh and smile with you and joke is, to me, a testament to how little importance we can put on a thing that has just sort of, by the nature of itself, garnered so much importance. And so the fact that my smile is just as big as it was when I had the most money to when I have the least money, to me is like, that helps me stay incredibly grounded. And the only way that I can still make art and have fun and smile and laugh and do all these things is like, you got to kind of, whether it's compartmentalization or however the system is that I've developed, it's over there somewhere, and it can be taken care of when it needs to.
Yeah, I'd really like to talk about this because I think it's really important, because most of the people in the world, most people struggle with money, right? Like, we know this is true. So, you talked about on this episode, what you just said, facing the most amount of debt you've ever had. Just walk me through, because I had a similar experience back in the global financial crisis. And I remember, I avoided thinking about it. And then one day I was like, I got to face this. And I remember seeing how bad it really was and realizing, like, we may lose our house over this. And I remember this feeling of like everything sort of swirling. Like, that's the description I would give it. Like out of control a bit. And I had recently, at the time, I was riding road bikes quite a bit, and we would race. And my coach had introduced me to Eckhart Tolle's work. And I had recently listened to have you listened to The Power of Now?
Does Eckhart read it?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to. No, I haven't. I will.
You've got to. Yeah, I wish we could,
for
for the listeners, I wish we could do it, but I there's just no chance. But him talking about how you have no problems now, right? Right now you have, and this idea of like problems are just a projection of something that may or may not happen. And of course, Mark Twain, which we can always attribute it to Mark Twain.
I was going to use this quote. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what's the quote?
Well, it's I've lived many great misfortunes in my life, most of which have never happened. Some of which have never happened.
I had lots of problems in my life, some of which happened. Yeah, some version of that. Like, we can always attribute things to Mark Twain or Rumi. Like, either way, like you totally. You can generally be covered. So I just remember, like, what could I control? And I was like, man, it got to the point where I had to get myself through days just with breath.
Yes.
Because I was like, I'm in control. It felt like the only thing at that moment that I had control over. And it was really interesting to notice the expansion, very, very slow, very incremental expansion of the sense of control when I really worked hard at not getting caught up in things that I had no control over then.
Yeah.
How, like, I mean, this is a current practice for you.
Yeah.
Like, this podcast was recent. You're saying this debt now. Like, what are you actually doing to somebody out there who's trying to follow this adventure journal of how Daren is dealing with this? What do you actually do?
Massive amounts of drugs and alcohol. No,
that's perfect. I mean, end of show.
Well, I've been sober from alcohol for over 4 years. And so honestly, if I had alcohol in my life right now, I think it would exacerbate the problem. I think that the poisoning of my body and my mind would not keep me in a place of presence. So I'd say that in jest. But I have a strong, which I developed 2 years ago now, a daily meditation practice. I use transcendental meditation, which kind of found its way to me through the funniest channel. I discovered after a lifelong love of Jerry Seinfeld and growing up watching Seinfeld and having basically my entire humor, my sensibility around humor developed by that show and just all this stuff, and found out he was a longtime TM user. And I thought, oh man, okay, well, that I can get behind, because the spiritual community can be a bit off-putting to me sometimes and feel contrived, or at least I feel something of an imposter trying to insert myself into it. So finding out he did it anyway, I find a facilitator locally. It's a real easy kind of getting into it. And I've been practicing every single day for 2 years now. And that's twice a day. And that's vital to me, is twice a day, because you think, doing your meditation in the morning and then think that that's going to hold, well, I'll speak personally, thinking that's going to hold me throughout the entire day. No, I need a midday. Okay. Remember all the things you've just developed throughout the day that you need to like kind of clear out again and have a second half, especially when I'm about to go pick up my kid from school, to get a nice clear sense of that. And so those two things, or that thing. And then I exercise. I exercise, and I know it's so simple, but that alleviation of tension and of stress and in your mind and in your body, where, you know, those are working in conjunction with each other. If you're not alleviating this physical buildup, then it's going to manifest in your mind, or vice versa. You know, it's just like, it's a symbiotic situation here that we got going on with this mind and body thing. And so I run as much as I can. And then I strength train on the days that I'm not running. And that, like that, I do feel a somewhat narcotic effect from that, of like, whoa, why am I so chill right now? Because you just ran 6 miles. Like, it makes sense to be able to have these things. And so to me, and wouldn't you know it, both of those things are free to meditate and to exercise. Mm-hmm. And so for anyone who can use the excuse that they can't do it, I would argue that you can. And even just small things like walking or jogging, or just closing your eyes for 5 minutes. Like, it doesn't have to be this devoted amount of time in your day. The amount of time we just don't even shut ourselves off for any sort of time whatsoever. And we're just letting ourselves, we're driving ourselves insane. And we are the drivers of this engine that is our mind. So those two things were vital for me to be able to weather this storm that I'm currently still in. So yeah, it's working.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think it's interesting because that like, turns out there's research that verifies what you just said. Not only anecdotally, it comes up all the time, but there's actual research, like it's science at this point. And it's hard to do. And the reason it seems hard to do is because it's so simple. I think that's what's interesting to me, is like, we feel like we need to have a more complicated, like, and then a place to hide, like, oh, meditation. Okay, now I need to go research the best form of meditation.
Yes.
At 17 books.
Yeah.
If I just buy another book on meditation, I don't have to meditate.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. And same thing with that. Like, if I just watch another YouTube video on deadlifting, I don't ever have to go to the gym.
Yeah. I want the perfect form before I get in there. I got to make sure I got it right. Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I loved this story that, Austin Kleon, the Steal Like an Artist.
I know the title. Yeah, no, I haven't read that. Yeah.
Really great. He one time, I don't know if he still does it, but when he started a meditation practice, he decided that when he came downstairs, his bedroom was upstairs. When he came downstairs, he would just sit on the top step for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole thing. Because he's like, I got to go down the stairs every morning.
Yeah.
I'll just sit on the top step for 3 or 5 minutes or something. So it doesn't have to be complicated.
No, and I think
be a walk with the dog.
Yeah, and you're speaking to the resistance around it. I think our egos are so primed, especially in this modern age of just nonstop productivity. Like for me, if I think that, when I started the practice, I thought, closing my eyes for 20 minutes meant 20 minutes that I'm not being productive. That means 20 minutes that I'm not making money. That means 20 minutes that I've just taken off of safety and security from my life. And so you just kind of
opposite of solving the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Like, no, I need to be more awake. Caffeine. I should have some more caffeine. That's the thing that's going to work. And so, yeah, just to me, it, like right away, it felt like such a radical defiance towards Western kind of culture and just this like model of ever-present productivity, that I was just like, when I'm like, oh man, this is so radical, I'm closing my eyes right now, I'm defying the system. And so I think to me, it was just that whole like bucking the system and being like, I'm going to go against this thing that's expected of me. And wouldn't you know it, it benefited me. God, go figure.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. You have a really, I'm not sure, self-deprecating, honest, like direct way of dealing with the ick factor of selling stuff and selling art. And like, it's one of my favorite things about the work you do.
Cool.
Talk to me about that. Like I don't even know how to describe it. Somebody needs to go watch a little reel and then have you say, really, I'm doing this again. Yeah. Like I joke, every year we sell calendars, behavior gap calendars. Yeah. And I've started a couple of years ago, I was like, hey, it's your favorite calendar sales guy. Yeah. Like I had to just like lean into this, ick of it. Tell me about
well, I mean,
how you deal with that.
I think the ick to me is the inherent inauthenticity that we're all experiencing when we're doing something that wasn't our idea in the first place. So the idea of marketing was invented by, let's credit Edward Bernays, the grandson of Freud, who created this whole idea of scarcity and these modes of selling to people in a way that say, you need this, like you need this product in your life. It was a thing that didn't exist to a certain degree before all that. And so we're coming into a system that we've all just adopted without any real consent. And we say, all right, on Black Friday, we do this thing. And then on Christmas, we do this thing. And I hate that stuff. It's all against, again, it goes against this feeling of like, I didn't come up with this. And so why am I going to perpetuate it? Well, now, Daren, you have to perpetuate it because you've chosen to be in a business where you sell things. Okay, well, then I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it. And it's terms people use as anti-marketing, which I love. I'm like, I'm marketing, but I'm going to do it in a way that's self-effacing and self-deprecating and sardonic and sarcastic and ironic. And I'll tell you, Carl, God, the thing that's the most frustrating to me is, again, speaking of men of certain age here, where we lived before the internet and we had influences that were comedic geniuses and things that just like weren't this kind of mimic like thing, where irony on these kids do not get irony, and they think I'm
the youth.
they think I'm thinking when I'm doing something so deeply ironic and they think I'm being serious, it breaks my heart, and that's just for the kids out there. But, so I do it in my way, and I think it's just better than like a classic like, you need this product. And also, the stuff that I sell, nobody needs it. Nobody needs any silly coffee mugs or art prints or anything. And so I'm also recognizing, acknowledging the fact that like, this is kind of valueless bullshit. And maybe you want it. I don't know. You think maybe you want this because it would be really helpful to me. And so it just comes from just a base, like from a foundation of like, I can't take myself seriously because none of this is serious. None of what I'm doing is serious. And again, maybe there's some artists out there who have these artistic statements and they would stand behind it and say it's this. My stuff is just, it looks pretty when you look at it. You have empty space on your walls, hang it on your wall. And so like kind of just breaking it all down, taking any of the pretentious aspect out of what I'm doing and just being like, here it is. And then on the second part of it is, the reason I'm self-deprecating is because when I was growing up, the love language of me, my family, and my friends was to make fun of each other and to do it in a way that like would be considered bullying nowadays, where like we just busted balls. We busted balls. And it meant that you really love that person. And so I bust my own balls in order to get ahead of anyone who thinks they're going to come and bust my balls, where I'm like, I'm making fun of me here. You're not making fun of me. And so it's a bit of a defense mechanism from growing up in a lifestyle that was just like, man, you can't get away with anything. You think someone's not going to call you out on your shit.
Yeah. So good. I miss all of that. Okay, I'm going to just hire you for a minute as the chief marketing officer of this show.
Okay.
So how are we going to market? Let's market this episode.
Yeah.
Like a conversation about money between Daren and Carl. Like what how are we going to market it?
Broke and happy. Money. Well, it's like, it's just because it's all these things that have inherent truth to them, where it's like money can't buy happiness. I think that is real. And God, it's a tough one to put me on the spot with, but it really, to me, my story now is, and this is something that I was laughing thinking about coming on the show and telling you that I'm currently broke, where I think I've listened to so many podcasts with like, entrepreneurs and people who did the whole thing. And now they're on the other side of it and they're sitting pretty. And they're like, man, when we were getting started, we were bootstrapping. We had stacks of credit cards that were maxed out. I can't wait to like come back on this show in 5 years and be like, remember when I was, and now I'm not. So it's weird to be like in the middle of the climactic part of it. I want to get to the side that's like, yeah, I learned all my lessons and here I am, but I'm currently in the shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Daren and Carl, currently in the shit.
That's perfect. That's perfect. It reminds me, we had Brendan Leonard. Brendan runs a little, online presence called Semi-Rad, another person that you would just love.
Cool.
And he wrote a book called Why I Hate Running and How You Can Too.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah. Super good.
Yeah.
You mentioned in that same podcast episode about the debt, you said something at the end. I'm just pulling up the quote here. You posed a hypothetical Like it was something like, what if I came on the show and told you I was debt free and crushing it? Would that be helpful? Talk to me about that. What were you pointing at there?
Oh God. Well, I mean, I think it's like the cliche aspect of anything motivational these days is to presume that you've gotten through everything and you're on the other side of it. Where I like to stay, maybe I'm kind of comfortable, or maybe I'm destined to stay in the shit in order to just kind of like be comfortable in it and not feel like it's the shit, where it's just, oh, this is just existence to a certain degree. Because I think we're always looking just ahead and go, in 6 months, I'm going to be better. How about fast forward 6 months, you go, oh, look at that. I'm in the same spot. And then 6 months later and so on. So it is that kind of in that floating in the water and being like, I'm just comfortable right here. And like, I'm getting my bearings. I think that's just going to be an aspect of reality that if we're always looking towards the future, which is, a complete lack of presence, then we will always be in suffering, because we will always be waiting for that thing to finally happen. When's that big break going to happen where you go, nope, there is no 6 months. There is right now. How are you? You kind of just give yourself an evaluation and say like, okay, I guess I'm good. And there's a level, I think there's more of a relatability to that than to hearing the story of the guy who is debt free and crushing it. And I would rather hear the guy who is insanely in debt and really happy. And he points to himself.
Yeah. Look, I think this is true because we know where most people are.
Yes.
Right. Like, and so the number of conversations I have, particularly with people 45, 55, 60 that are saying like, gosh, I spent my whole life chasing a thing. Mm-hmm. And then I finally realized I had it the whole time. Mm-hmm. Like the process of being was the thing.
Right.
The process of learning to float independent of water levels was the thing.
Yeah.
And because we all know that no matter what the number is when you open that, like you talked about, no matter what the number is when we open the metaphorical or real bank account mm-hmm. screen on our whatever we do now on our phones, mm-hmm. It will never be enough.
Right.
Like sometimes I wonder, like if money could talk to us. I was really curious about this the other day. I think I'm going to have a conversation with money. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to have money on as a guest.
That's great.
And because I think what money would say is like, bro, you gave me a job I can't do. Yeah. Right. Like this is not my job. Like I think it would be like, I'm an exchange of value.
Yes.
I was here to make your life easier. Uh-huh. It wasn't ever like, you've made me into this beast of burden, and I've disappointed you. My whole life has been disappointing.
Not fair. Yeah, totally. Yes, I have a tattoo on my arm here that I got when I was about 19 years old. Which, to look back at it now and to think, what the hell was my relationship with money at that time? So there's a artist whose name was Ben Folds. He was in a band called Ben Folds 5. He did a solo project. There's this line that stood out to me, and it's, "Money talks, I hate to listen." And I thought it was just the most profound, like, yes, like I hate to listen to. And I got it tattooed, and it's within the insignia on the back of the dollar bill with the pyramid and the eye, which has its all weird connotations. Who knows what that is? Anyway, I took out the E pluribus unum and replaced it with "Money talks, I hate to listen." And the years that have gone by, and I have still, and it's right here on my wrist or my arm, and I live with it. And I have to think, what was going on at 19 years old that I thought, man, money is just the worst, and it's got all this power. And I gave it too much importance. I gave it too much significance, and then therefore lived in this mode of scarcity of like, I never have enough, man. And I'll never have enough. And just believing these stories that I presented to myself, where not having that wealthy, like the wealthy mind state of just like, you're thinking about it way too much at way too young of an age. And I did through all these years. And now my goal every day is to how little can I think about it, and still function.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so interesting, like that the word story, like just how many stories. It turns out it is just a piece of paper, or now a 0 and a 1.
Yep.
It's nothing else. Everything else is a made up construct.
Yes.
Safety, security, happiness, all of that as it relates to money.
Yep.
right, is just a story. Now,
Yes.
those are very real things. Safety, security, dreams, happiness. Those are very real things. But as it relates to money, they're just made up stories.
Yes. Yes.
That we have believed. You have a print that says no BS.
Uh-huh. It says no BS today, no BS tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've started a new project.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just sort of curious what your relationship is to this, because you live in some similar worlds. I started realizing that most of the places I play in for work have a lot of BS.
Yes. It's the guys in the khakis, right?
Yeah. Well, the financial side, for sure. The book writer author side, for sure. The online presence guy, the motivational speaker guy, all of it. Everywhere I went, I was like, oh no, am I one of those? You know, and I would see somebody else doing the thing that I was about to get up and do, like a version of it. I hoped, I like to think it was dramatically different than what I was actually going to do, but both people were standing on a stage speaking. And I was like, so maybe about a year ago, I started a project called the No BS Project, where I was like, I want to get myself out of those environments and away from those people. Mm-hmm. So I spent a lot of time in the mountains, like in relatively dangerous terrain, avalanche terrain, in the backcountry skiing, and then climbing on ridges. And I've always done that. And part of what I realized in this No BS project was I was doing that because like that hand wavy BS stuff from the stage, try that in avalanche terrain, right, and see what happens to you.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like try that deadlifting.
Yeah.
Like 10X, you just yell 10X at the bar and like it'll. So how have you dealt with, because my sense is like, well, first of all, what was that print about? And second, how does it relate to your ability to show up online?
Yeah. I mean, the BS, to your point, is that there's a community, there's a crafted kind of curated, there's just a lot of cliches, I think, that people perpetuate and find that they relate to a cliche version of who they want to be. And all these archetypes that have been created, essentially, once the internet was created, we all have these like kind of plug and play models. You can be the fitness influencer, you can be the spiritual influencer. And all of that presumes that you know more about something than somebody else does. It doesn't work unless I am the authority on this on this subject, and you will come to me and you will pay me and I will give you the information. It's behind a guarded wall that I only hold the key to. And to me, that is inherently bullshit. Nobody knows what is going on in this world. We all showed up here without any sort of sense
training.
Exactly.
Manual.
This is like, it's on the job training as we go. And I think that there's so much more benefit and so much more, I find it so much more desirable to hear again about I'd rather hear about a person who is in debt than I don't want to say this too firmly, but you know, there's obviously value in hearing from somebody who was in debt, like someone like Eckhart Tolle, who had his own spiritual experience through I don't know what divine force came and gave him what he has. He's a bit of an outlier. And I do listen to him because he speaks from a place of experience and authority. But I think, you know, our bullshit detectors need to be really keen and recognize that the ones who you probably hear about, who can provide you this sort of model of living your life, it's probably bullshit. You know, you like can seek out like more of that stuff by maybe like Forrest Gumping it and ending up on a bench next to somebody and being like, what's your story? What's going on with you? Versus paying somebody handsome sums of money to be like, please give me the answer. So I just think that there's a lot of charlatans. There's a lot of bullshit. And for me, the mantra, no bullshit today, no bullshit tomorrow, was just personal life where I'm creating or I'm giving too much attention to the bullshit, where the bullshit's always around us. Like I could step out my door right now and experience some bullshit, but it's about how I can actually like be whatever. It's bullshit. Bullshit will always prevail and persist, but how much is it affecting me? And so it's just more of that kind of personal mantra of like, just not letting stuff get to me and being way more easygoing than I ever have before, not stressing myself out and doing all these things, you know, because you can live an incredibly stressful life for very little money in this world. You can go out and be bothered by everybody. Everybody can do everything wrong in your eyes. Drive your car down the road. You can spend a mile just getting so frustrated with people. And so for me, it was just like, how much can I cut out the bullshit without it actually going away in the world, but not getting to me really.
So good. That I started caring deeply about this because it's actually, it has lasting impact. Like I call it success porn.
Yeah, nice.
Like the hand wavy success porn.
Yeah.
It has an actual impact on my friend who is trying to create something and then runs into the resistance that we talked about, and then sees somebody else who says, here's 7 steps to, success, $1 million, and 7 steps to 100,000 followers on Instagram.
Yep.
And it turns out that person doesn't know. Like I just wish we could all let go of it all. But that Instagram kind of life, the highlight reel.
Yeah. And I mean, also problem. Like, I'm in a privileged position of holding, we want to talk about numbers, the importance of numbers, like, looking at my bank account versus looking at my Instagram follower number, which used to be a deep obsession of mine and intrinsically tied to my value and to my vanity and to my ego, and to like, look at this, like, look how it keeps growing. And also all the presumptions that come along with it from other people who think, dude's got a number, dude's balling out. That's why I couldn't wait to get on the show and tell you all I'm broke. So don't think that 333,000 followers, that's not sometimes I fantasize. If every follower gave me $1 a year, $1 a year,
right,
I'd be okay.
What are we talking about?
It's like, I just want to, I laugh at the idea that means anything. I mean, of course it does. It means things because it has visibility and it gives me clout, which would potentially lead to opportunities. But at the end of the day, I still have to be the one who delivers it. No one's going like, he's got 330,000 followers, hire him. It's like, no, he's got 330,000 followers because he does some cool shit that's unique and original. Let's hire him, and then let's have this awkward negotiation where this guy says, and just the whole thing like becomes the part about it that I hate, the non-artistic part, which is the business side. But anyway, I just want to dispel any idea that because you have a lot of Instagram followers, you're immediately successful. It's a springboard, but you still need to be the one who's like delivering the goods.
Yeah. So interesting, those numbers. I remember when my first book came out, 2012, Amazon updates the book ranking every hour. And I know that because there were 36 straight hours where I made sure to know, like, and you look back now, and I don't know if it's age or experience or you just like, I can't believe you get so caught up in that. And then I get caught up in it again, like not that specific one, but another version of it shows up in the new little Zen master that needs to hit me with a big stick. So
yes, totally. I mean, we can we'll keep learning these lessons for the rest of our lives. Sure. And, we can have grace and forgiving for ourselves for being such vain little egoic creatures.
Let's do this, Daren. I'm curious as we sort of wrap up. How do you think about enough? Just the concept of enough.
Yeah, again, I think that concept only exists in the present moment because, I mean, it's so funny when I end up catching myself saying these things that I used to roll my eyes at hearing other people say, and then I get to have my own experience with it and go, only this moment that you and I are talking right now is enough. And so once this call ends, I'll step away from this computer and then have to reevaluate what is enough in this moment and the next moment and the next moment. I think there can be planning for the future and to set yourself up, but ultimately the only thing that matters is the enough in the moment. And God, it's like so funny how I get like, oh God, you're so spiritual now, Daren. I'm still trying this on. This is still like a new thing for me. So yeah. And I believe it. It only works if you believe it.
It's interesting. I do a lot of work with people who help other people create plans, right? And plans are inherently forward-looking. And
yes,
one of the questions that always comes up in business planning or financial planning or life planning is the planner's need for a plan getting in the way of the client enjoying their life.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. And so I this idea of like, yeah, you know what? Every once in a while you do need to do this. Like, so I developed this idea of like having your little financial planning hat and making it like the ugly. Maybe you could help me actually.
Sure.
You're the first person I think of when I think of designing a really ugly hat. I'm just kidding. I was a really ugly hat that you want to take off as soon as you can.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. So you put it on every once in a while, like once a month, once a quarter, twice a year. I don't know. Put it on, but make it ugly.
Yes.
Because you want this thing off.
Yes.
And then you go back to being there present right now.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's great to be, again, like I'm speaking from a place where I don't have a plan for the future. And so there's probably an 80-year-old Daren who's just looking back and be like, hey, can you put the hat on for like a couple minutes and just take this somewhat serious? And it's very, very hard for me. And fortunately I've been trying, over the years to find to outsource that sort of thing. Like I felt remiss if I hadn't mentioned this. If there's any young artists listening to this or anyone who's starting, I guess, anything that you think is going to blossom to any degree, get a fucking accountant. That was something that I screwed up right from the beginning. And that was the hugest pitfall I fell into. Got out of the pitfall, got a terrible accountant, fell into an even deeper pitfall. And now, from what I can tell, I have an insanely good accountant who's very, very mindful and considers me and the 80-year-old me. And so that's just my only little 5-cent advice there. Yeah.
No, I love that.
Which I'll write off. I'm going to write off that advice that I just gave away.
The whole thing. Yeah, for sure. Write that whole thing off. Your travel to the bedroom to record, right, everything, the clothing you're wearing, the insanely ugly financial planning hat you're going to design. So Daren, I've heard you mention publicly that you have a child. How old is your kid?
6.5 going on 7, rounding the base for 7.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's just pretend like 7. So let's pretend like 25 years from now, I'm still doing this show.
Sweet.
And we have your 32-year-old kid on. And I asked them, what money means to them. What would you hope their answer would be? "32 years old."
Yeah. I mean, I think, because I guess, obviously I would consider, I would want it to mean what money means to me and not say, I want you to have a different definition, because I want to cultivate the meaningful definition of money and what it means to me. I think, without, I guess simplifying it to the nature of the question is it means freedom. It means the ability and capacity to live almost unburdened by it. Like, sorry, that's a little clunky, but just that if money can free you from money, it's this weird kind of paradoxical thing where money, sorry, I'm now answering the question as to what money means to me, but I don't want money to be associated with money means that you get to have a lot of things, that you get to acquire materials that you wouldn't have otherwise got. You can finally have the thing. To me, money and what it provides for me is freedom, is time to just take an hour or so out of the day to talk to you and then go for a run and do all these things that aren't tied to producing more of that money. And so I get to live a lifestyle which I hope I can impart on my child and however that manifests in their life, but that it just buys you your time. It buys you the availability to live in any way you want. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And you don't have to wear khakis. No khakis is the
no. Yeah, you don't have to wear khakis. You don't have to wear. We actually had an interview where I brought that story up, and somebody was like, "Carl, I'm literally wearing khakis right now."
I'm not even have pants on. Look at me. I'm pantsless.
Amazing, Daren. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers.
Bye.
50 Fires is a production of Blind Nil Audio in association with The Roost. I'm looking forward to our next conversation around the fire. Cheers, my friends.
The views, information, or opinions expressed in the series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Chip and Joanna Gaines, Blind Nil Audio, nor Magnolia.